Go.
I'm reading today from my latest release, Money Creek, and the only thing you need to know about this scene, which is toward the beginning of the book, is that Claire, my main character, quit her job just prior to being fired, and we find her now the morning after when she wakes up. Here we go. The last time Claire woke up with a stranger, she swore it would never happen again, but here she was, opening her eyes to a room she'd never seen before. She lay on her side, naked in a four-poster bed, as a familiar gut-clenching remorse made her stomach tumble. Her breathing became shallow and rapid. She didn't dare turn to see what kind of man she'd gone home with. It was still dark out, and only the glare of the streetlight poking through the window blinds lit the room. It smelled faintly of eucalyptus, very tidy except for the pile of clothes strewn near the door. Next to the bed was an antique table and Tiffany-style lamp, a pile of books stacked high. She skimmed the titles. What a man read would tell her a lot. There were the most recent releases from Margaret Atwood, Zadie Smith, and Emma Donoghue, contemporary fiction by women authors. Maybe she'd hit the jackpot and hooked up with a well-read feminist man. She turned to her right and found, instead, a woman leaning on one elbow, gazing at her. She had clear eyes, auburn hair hanging loose around her shoulders, and a slightly patrician air. Claire grabbed the sheet and pulled it up to her chest. "Good morning, Claire," she said in a timbre-rich alto. Claire stared at her with fixed eyes. Hearing her name made her feel more vulnerable. The woman had the advantage over her. Claire knew nothing, and she knew everything. She prayed she hadn't done anything mortifying. It was a good sign the woman was smiling at her. Whatever she did couldn't have been too bad. She broke her gaze and lowered her eyes. "Good morning," she said, her throat froggy from sleep and God knows what else. "You seem uncomfortable." Claire forced herself to look at her. "I'm a little nervous. I've never been with a woman before." "So you said last night. I hope it was a good experience for you." She hoped so too. She wasn't upset at having sex with a woman, something she knew would have happened sooner or later, but she was ashamed she didn't remember her meeting her or anything that came after that. Her short-term memory had been on the fritz. When she was in a blackout, she forgot everything almost as soon as it happened, which was why drunks so often repeated themselves. At least that's what she'd read in a depressing article on alcoholism. She scooched up to lean against the headboard and winced at the hammering in her head. She was beginning to feel the full strength of her hangover. "How are you feeling?" the woman said. She now sat in a lotus position facing her. Claire avoided her eyes. She seemed entirely out of her league. "Not so bad. Yourself?" "I'm surprisingly good, given how drunk we were last night," she said, "but I have no regrets." She reached over for Claire's hand and held it gently. "I hope you don't." "Can you regret something you can't remember?" "No, it was lovely." She looked on the floor for her cell phone. It was nowhere in sight. "Do you happen to know what time it is?" The woman turned toward her nightstand. "It's 6. Still time for more sleep." She ducked her head to meet Claire's eyes. "Unless you were interested in doing something else?" Her voice was sultry, as if she really desired her, which Claire found impossible to believe. "No, I didn't realize it was so late. I've got to go." She swung her legs to the side of the bed. 6 is late? "I have to get into the office. I work in a sweatshop." Why was she lying? She remembered she didn't have to go to work, that she'd quit the day before, but she was desperate to get away. She looked to where her clothes were scattered near the door. Apparently, they'd been in quite a hurry to get them off. "I thought you said you were a lawyer." "I am, and the hours are ridiculous." Claire took a breath before she slid off the bed and tried to walk in a reasonably dignified manner across the room to her clothes. She could feel the woman's eyes on her. "You're beautiful. You know that, don't you?" No, she didn't. Surely her outside looked as bad as her inside felt, a toxic brew of nausea, the hammering head, and a bucket full of recrimination. Her business suit lay crumpled on the floor, and she pulled it on before glancing back at the woman. She'd gotten out of bed and stood naked in front of her, as comfortable as a hand in a glove. She was at least 6 feet, a few inches taller than Claire, and 100 times more confident. Whatever actually happened, she'd hoped she'd given the woman pleasure. Usually her blackouts erased the memory of behavior she'd rather forget, but she would have liked remembering her first time with a woman, would like to know whether it was everything she suspected it would be. Claire had to clear her throat to talk. Sorry, I have to run. I'll let myself out. Wait. The woman came closer. Her nakedness seemed billboard-sized. You seem skittish. There's no pressure around what happened last night. 2 adults and all that. Sure, I understand. It's just that I have to get going. She stared at Claire for a moment before leading her out to the bedroom, to the front door. She seemed ready to move on herself. She held the door open, unconcerned at who might pass in the hallway. The name's Ellen, by the way. I know you don't remember. I do remember. Of course I do. Ellen raised one eyebrow. Are you lying to me or to yourself? She smiled and motioned Claire out the door. Take care of yourself, Claire. Thanks.